Hello and welcome to the Godel Pod. My name is Jade Evans and I'm Head of Client Strategy at Godel Technologies. I'm pleased to be joined today by Ben Brown, CTO of UnderwriteMe. Before we kick off and talk about all things technology, would you mind just giving us a little bit of an introduction into yourself, Ben, and UnderwriteMe for anyone not familiar with the business?
Perfect. Thanks, Jade. Thanks for having me today. So my name's Ben Brown, Chief Technology Officer at UnderwriteMe. I actually joined UnderwriteMe about 18 months ago now, and I kind of joined for the next phase of UnderwriteMe's transformation. So my background is engineering leadership. For about the last 5 or 10 years, I've been leading engineering teams across various disciplines, from kind of recipe boxes at Gusto through online accounting at Intuit, and then I finally found myself at InsurTech with UnderwriteMe. Tell you a little bit about UnderwriteMe. So UnderwriteMe, we're a software business in the life and health insurance business. We actually have 2 products which we sell to different markets. Our first product is for the UK market. It's a product used by IFAs and advisors to sell protection products in the UK. So while most of you probably won't have heard the UnderwriteMe brand, it's certainly a brand used by many of the IFAs in the UK market, and about 20% of the market goes through our product. Our second product is a B2B SaaS product used by insurers. We call it a rules engine. So it basically stores the questions and answers and the rules and underwriting rules used to generate risk levels for those insurance policies, and that's used by 40 insurers across the globe, right over from kind of North America, Europe, into Asia, and right over to Sydney and New Zealand. So yeah, plenty of usage there.
Worldwide.
It's very much so.
Amazing. Well, we've got a couple of topics, a good few that we'd be really interested to dive into today with you, Ben. So I think kicking off first, we just wanted to talk a bit more about building AI products in life insurance. And I think for everyone outside of the industry, we probably don't fully appreciate how complex life insurance is. So it'd be really keen to hear from you, like, how do you navigate those challenges and how do you build products in that space?
Yeah, so this was my first journey into life insurance as well, and I think that the thing that was really interesting for me was in general insurance. So most of us buy kind of car insurance or home insurance policies on a yearly basis. When you sell that policy, really you kind of know what the outcome of that policy is going to be within a year. So you know whether somebody's going to claim, you know whether somebody's going to actually have an accident or have a claim through that process. And with life insurance, you can often be buying a policy where you don't actually know the outcome for maybe 20, 30 or more years. So if I'm a young, healthy 25-year-old and I buy a life insurance policy for 30 years, really, we don't know whether somebody's going to claim on that for 30 years. And that creates a very different kind of approach to the challenges that we have compared to kind of general insurance, where you find out much sooner.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's strange because it's obvious, but until you think about it, it is a really long customer journey cycle for you there. How does that complexity then shape how you think about technology, risk, delivery? Because you have to think about the now and the future. How do you consider that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest change really is I guess the kind of way in which we have to kind of sell this to our customers. Our customers have a much longer lens on kind of the risks that they're kind of writing, and therefore they, I guess, the risk and compliance aspects of any sale make a big difference. So when we talk about some of our AI products, what I'll kind of talk to you about is that actually AI is really exciting for our customers. But it's also quite daunting because, again, they don't know whether they've made the right decisions for such a long period of time. And they've been doing things the way they've been doing them for a very long time. They've got good processes around that. They've got good risk and understanding of how that risk is involved. And so introducing something like AI is a really big change for them. And so we're kind of having to go on a journey with them. And I think that's what's been really interesting and exciting about the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. And AI is everywhere right now. Where do you think AI can genuinely help in the life insurance space?
Yeah, so where we've started to focus at UnderwriteMe is on making our underwriters more effective, so the underwriters of our customers. And the reason we've tried to focus there is That's where a large proportion of the complexity lies in the products that are sold, having underwriters having to manually do things like manually check underwriting decisions or manually audit parts of a policy after they've been sold. And underwriting is it's an industry where the amount of people going into that industry is not as large as it needs to be. So in order for our customers to grow, they have to find ways to be more efficient, have to find ways for these same amount of underwriters to be writing more business. Otherwise, they're essentially stopped from growing. So I think that was a really interesting use case because, we hear a lot of, I guess, scare stories out there around how AI is going to take jobs and how AI is going to kind of put everybody out of work. But here we found a really good opportunity where we can, turbocharge and make those underwriters even more efficient and productive. And that's also solving a problem where there aren't enough underwriters in the market.
Absolutely. No, that sounds brilliant. And I heard UnderwriteMe recently launched your AI engine. Could you tell me a bit about what it is and what problem you were looking to solve when you created it?
Yeah, certainly. So we launched our AI engine in the UK market back in March this year. And what our AI engine is, and the first use case for that is something we call post-issue audit or post-issue sampling. So post-issue audit is a process which takes place in the life insurance industry, and it's a post-sale process. So after you've sold a policy, a reinsurer will ask you to audit a number of cases on your book to make sure that actually, based on evidence you can get for that case, the underwriting decision was correct. And so what does that mean? What it means is I take the application answers and questions and answers that kind of done during the application form. I combine that with some medical evidence, which I maybe got from your GP. And I look to see whether actually, based on the medical evidence, do the questions and answers match that, or has somebody misrepresented themselves? Have they kind of answered a question incorrectly? Now, in the UK, life insurers can be asked to do somewhere in the region of about 5 to 7% of the policies on their book each year through this process. And so each of those individual kind of cases can take perhaps an hour or 2 hours for an underwriter to work through if they do that manually. I don't know whether anybody's ever looked at their own medical report, but if you try and get that online or you look through some of the apps, what you can see is actually that can be 50, 60, 80 pages long, probably if you've had a few kind of medical conditions and needed a few follow-ups. And essentially the underwriter needs to go through that whole report, read it all, and then decide, actually, has this person misrepresented themselves compared to the questions and answers? And what we've now done is we've released a product. It takes those two pieces of information and it cuts down the amount of time it takes to roughly about 10 minutes per case. And what we do is we essentially put a summary in front of the underwriter saying, we've read this medical report based on this application form. Here's where we think the misrepresentation might have been. Or actually on a clean case, actually, no, everything looks good. We can't find any examples of kind of misrepresentation. Then basically all our underwriter needs to do is go in, human in the loop, make sure that that's correct, and then they've done a much quicker process than they would have done otherwise.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, 10 minutes versus an hour, and I suppose that you have quite a significant amount of volume going through it as well. So overall, that leads to quite a lot of efficiency gains for you, and I assume savings.
That's correct. Yeah, definitely. And it's like win-win for everybody. Those underwriters can then focus on more impactful work and kind of doing things that are actually going to lead to growing of the business.
Absolutely. And when you were designing the AI engine, how did you make those decisions about where AI should be involved versus where you need that important human in the loop?
Yeah, so I think what we knew was that working in insurance, kind of risk and compliance and governance are really important. And so where we wanted to start with a use case was, I guess, first of all, something that's genuinely useful. I think we've all seen kind of every product out there nowadays is sprinkling in AI to as part of its kind of products and features. We wanted to do something that was actually useful rather than just kind of putting some marketing dust in there and saying that this was going to be going to change the world. So that was the first piece. I think the second piece was then, how do we do something that will allow people to start building trust in this product whilst also keeping a human in the loop? So the first use case we always envisaged would need to have that human in the loop. Where would we love to get to eventually? I'm sure we'd love to get to a point where an AI could make decisions based on a set of rules, based on an application form, based on a philosophy from an insurer. But we also know that's quite a long way away. And so what would allow us to build that trust was these kind of first use cases that we've put out there. And that was really the genesis of it. And then it was, how can we work with those kind of beta customers in the early stages to make sure that they get that level of trust that they would need, both from a product and underwriting perspective, but also in order to kind of fulfill the kind of trust of their compliance and governance teams.
Yeah, understood. So would it be fair to say that you started with the regulation, the data sensitivity and trust as kind of the core of it, and then you planned around that journey, right? AI makes sense here. Human in the loop is an absolute must for us to have. Is that how you thought about it?
That's it. Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think as we've gone through the process of building, we've realized there's a few different kind of stages to this. So what we've tried to do is get a product out early, find some of our partners in a market, and then work with those partners in order to kind of improve the accuracy of that product with that kind of partner. You can only get so far, working on your own with nobody there doing real cases. You can put as many test cases through as you like, and you kind of think you're doing well, and you think you've got some high accuracy rates. Then you put some real cases through it, and you realize exactly what needs to happen. And so that's been a real learning for us, but also I think it's been necessary because we talked about earlier, not many people are just going to buy this thing based on a wing and a prayer, if you like. They want to know that it is going to be doing a good job. And so therefore that kind of close working relationship through a beta and into a general availability, I think is the way to do that.
Absolutely. And I think you said it there, you've walked the walk here and you learn more through doing that. If you were to advise other organisations or your peers out there, what are the considerations or the guardrails you would advise them to think about when they are looking to introduce AI into regulated decision making?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first one is there's no kind of expertise is especially important in this. So where we sit in a really great position at UnderwriteMe is we're owned by a larger company called Pacific Life, and we we sit inside the reinsurance division of Pacific Life. And the way that we built this product is really in conjunction with our reinsurance colleagues to make sure that ultimately they take the underlying risk behind these policies, and they would need to sign off on any product that went out there. So I think the biggest piece of advice is really, as you're building these products, you need to work with experts in order to make sure that you've got something that actually works. I think it's great. We've got loads of kind of technology organizations out there who are able to build things, but we feel we've got that extra kind of step up by being able to kind of work with those experts. So I think that's probably point number one there. I think probably point number two is then how do you gain confidence in a product? Well, you gain confidence in a product by using it. So I think, as a technology leader, it will probably come as no surprise. There's lots of people out there trying to sell me products on a day-to-day basis. And I think the bit that I've probably reflected on is what really matters to me is being able to see a product working. And so getting that product into early beta, being able to give that to customers, being able to give them an opportunity to try it is so much more valuable than just kind of showing them some slideware demo or kind of a video or something that actually isn't real. So I think, second bit of advice would really be get something out there that is real and be able to see what it actually does with your data, with your cases, with your information, not just believe something that's kind of the magic that somebody might sprinkle on from a marketing perspective.
Yeah, very, very sensible, very sensible. And I'd be interested to talk a little bit about shipping good software in complex environments. How would you describe your software and delivery environment today?
Yeah, so I think we're on that journey towards how we use AI to help us be more efficient and effective as a product development organization. I think we've found areas where that's really valuable for us. So especially in these new products that we're building, a lot of what we're able to build is kind of made even more impactful by our usage of AI tooling in the team. But then we've also had challenges around how do we try to transform some of our more legacy pieces of code, with AI, because actually they're far more, far more realistic, but also quite difficult problems to solve. So we've really started on that journey. I think we're some of the way along it, but as we're starting to see in the marketplace, there's kind of lots going on and lots of learning happening. I think the motto to my team is, I don't need to be bleeding edge, but I do want to be cutting edge. There's lots of people out there who can learn the hard mistakes with that bleeding edge, and I will quite happily take being a little bit more delayed, as long as we can learn from what other people are learning in the market.
Absolutely. And is there anything that makes shipping software in life insurance harder than what people might expect, or similar to the other industries that you've worked in?
Yeah, so I think the interesting thing is we talked earlier about one of our products. So we call this product a kind of a rules engine, and really the rules engine is it's a programming language, it's a compiler, it's kind of everything that you would be doing if you were building new software, but it builds out the rules that are used for our customers to make decisions. And what each of our customers gets is a nice user interface. It gives them a Visio-like work chart that allows them to see where the rules go, what decisions can be made, and allows them to configure their rules themselves. Now, I think what was interesting for me coming into this market was learning that actually that wasn't normal. Most people were using rules engines that were quite hard to configure, that needed either developers or the actual vendor themselves to make changes to it. And whenever I see our kind of product in customers' hands, you realize quite how powerful it is for people to kind of change the rules themselves, to be able to experiment, to be able to do things. Now, I think there's a great journey in as we go forward now about what that becomes over the next kind of 5 to 10 years as AI becomes even more prevalent. And I think we're on probably close to the start of that journey, but we're really starting to work pretty quickly to understand how we can get that product to be fit for purpose over the next 5 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And have you learned anything about delivering quickly, but without compromising quality, governance, or the important trust that you mentioned in your industry?
Yeah, I think for me, and this is certainly, a sentiment shared by another of other engineering leaders that I've kind of talked to over the last couple of years, is that really all AI is doing is kind of making some of the foundations, some of the important things we've been doing already even more important. So we can only release code quickly if we know that it works, if we can test it, if we know we can do fast builds and we have confidence that we can put those builds into production. If we have confidence, we know we're building the right thing, or we know how we might experiment to understand whether we're building the right thing. So really, all of those concepts have been, really important through software development over the last 10, 20, 30 years. They've now become even more important because the speed at which we can then deliver software with AI means that, if we're 3 or 4 times more productive with AI, then we might need to be able to release 3 or 4 more times quicker, and therefore the speed at which we should be able to test things, to validate them, is even more important. So I think the big learning is, those foundations matter even more than they perhaps did before AI came into the picture.
Makes complete sense. And are there any early warning signs if a project is becoming too difficult or unshippable?
Yeah, so I think a couple of warning signs for me would be quality issues, starting to see incidents occurring, starting to see problems at production. That would probably start to indicate that you weren't actually as confident in what you were releasing. Again, I don't think that's any really different to perhaps where we would have been, 5 years ago. We're still caring about, how do our applications perform in production, how reliable are they? And I think again that just becomes the leading signs there. Over the next few years we're probably going to go through a very interesting process of understanding whether, at the moment I think it's still considered to be pretty important that human beings can still understand the code that's getting written. I think there's probably an interesting journey to go through as we go from that to a position where maybe you don't need to understand what that code is anymore. Actually, the AI is the only thing that needs to read that, and therefore it becomes something of an abstraction away from that code. But I think we're probably some way away from that in many parts of organizations. I think there's some places where that might be appropriate, especially in a kind of regulated space. It's really important for us that we build that trust with our customers.
I completely agree. And AI assisted development is changing how engineers work day to day. What has your team achieved or done differently regarding speed, governance, quality?
So I think the main piece is probably around the fact that we can test and learn much more quickly. So we're on a journey with our AI products. I don't think anybody would be able to say we know 100% what that's going to look like in 5 years' time. We've got lots of learning to do. And so really the question becomes, how quickly can we learn whether something is a good idea, whether something is going in the right direction? And I think really that's the biggest change we've seen across our products, is being able to test, learn, get prototypes out there in days, not weeks, means that we can get valuable data, which then we can use to understand, are we on the right track or not? And then importantly, also put those kind of prototypes, those kind of early POCs in front of our customers. I think what we have learned is that actually through some of our early beta phases with our AI engine product, we probably waited a bit too long to get stuff in front of our customers, and we were probably almost a bit nervous. Oh, well, I'm not sure it's ready to show them yet. And I think what we've learned is that early feedback, that getting it in front of them at the start of a project really does help. It really helps us to gain confidence, but it also helps the customer to learn what they want, because I'm not sure everybody knows what they want. They have to kind of work that out, and sometimes a practical real life example of a product helps them to understand how something should work.
Okay, so keen to fail faster, learn faster as we continue in the AI era. Makes sense. And I suppose if we do look ahead and we think about experimentation and what comes next, what do you think successful innovation looks like in a regulated environment?
So I think the probably the key question is, how can you move fast enough whilst also sticking within regulation? That's the kind of key challenge here. I think regulation is going to catch up at some stage, but normally it takes a lot longer than the speed at which we can move with software. So I think that's going to be the main challenge for us, is how do we continue to kind of evolve. I think the important part of that, again, is working very closely with our customers, making sure that they're comfortable with it. Even when regulation is moving, you've also then got, every individual insurer probably has a different risk profile and a different way of seeing things. So with over 40 insurers across the globe, we also spend a lot of time working with them through some of the beta phases to make sure that they're comfortable with the risk. They often have to go through AI governance processes, which are probably at the kind of start of their journey as a process. So they're learning how to take software through this. I know we've certainly had some of our partners state that this is the first time they've bought an AI tool. So they're kind of learning as they go. And so I think we've probably learned that some of the processes we go through from a compliance and legal perspective take longer than you would normally expect, but that's part of the building the trust and the kind of confidence with our customers.
Makes sense. So is it the closer feedback loops on both sides of the fence? Is that how you're thinking about balancing the innovation with governance, with customer trust, or is there anything else there, or is it just faster feedback loops?
I think faster feedback loops is a key aspect to it. I think it's you can never predict exactly where regulation will go, but if we can move quickly, if we can work with people, if we can kind of demonstrate that we're able to kind of deliver value in different ways, I think that kind of makes us a valuable partner for our customers.
For sure. And if you had to pick one thing that organizations consistently underestimate when it comes to introducing AI into a regulated decision-making area, what would that be?
I think probably the big one to call out at the moment is time taken. I think certainly it isn't as quick to bring things in as you would like, because as I say, a lot of these processes people are going through for the first time or near the first time. They're learning as they go through that. And so I think what we've learned is that does take some time. Now, back to the earlier point of us needing to move quickly, I think that's where the conflict perhaps occurs, and where we're trying to work out now, how do we help customers to get confidence more quickly and to run their processes more quickly? If we can solve that, I think we'll be onto a great place. I think there's still a lot of work to do.
Absolutely. And I suppose you talked before about reaching out for expertise in areas as you're going on this kind of journey. I mean, Godel have been working with UnderwriteMe for some time now. I think I'd be really interested to get your view on that kind of modern technology partnership, and the partnership with Godel. Maybe if you could talk a little bit about how that first came about and what you were looking to achieve when you reached out to somebody.
Yeah, certainly. So we've been working with Godel probably over 2 years now, I think just about 2 and a bit years. And so we started the relationship a little bit before I joined the organization. And really, I guess our goal at the start was to bring in a trusted partner who could work with us and help us to kind of deliver some of the technology change that we needed to do in the organization. And so I'd say we started off with a model where we probably had some dedicated Godel teams delivering us some kind of new features for market, some kind of revamped kind of front ends that we wanted to get out there. And over time, what we've done is we've moved to a model that's a bit more of a balanced kind of augmented team model. So we've now got most of our teams are augmented with our UnderwriteMe employees, and then some Godel employees sitting alongside them, ultimately treating each other like teammates and kind of not seeing any difference in terms of how they work together day to day. And so I think that allows us to do is, first of all, it gives us an easy way of kind of getting more pure horsepower into our teams. How do we get more things done? And that's certainly one of the benefits we've had from the relationship. We've got more done from the roadmap that we needed to get done. The second thing is it also allows us to learn from each other. And I think that's probably, to kind of come to the second part of your question, that's probably where a modern partner is really helpful. We need to be working with somebody who can, I guess, bring in their kind of thoughts, their kind of learnings from an AI perspective. Godel are working with many other customers on a day-to-day basis, so we kind of benefit from some of the learnings that come from other engagements. And I hope that helps us to kind of learn how to, I think, first of all, make better decisions around AI within our teams. But then secondly, to look at how we kind of keep maturing the organization. I think the software development lifecycle, the SDLC, is probably going to change quite significantly over the next few years. And I think working with a partner who can see that happening in other organizations can perhaps help us to get a bit of a head start on that and stop us from kind of having to learn all the mistakes ourselves. Back to my earlier point about cutting edge and bleeding edge, I think you can kind of help us there to stay that cutting edge by bringing in those ideas.
Absolutely. And I completely agree with what you said about the software development lifecycle and how we can see that changing. So yeah, no, certainly super keen to stay close with you guys as that journey evolves. When you think about the next 12 to 18 months, where do you see the biggest opportunities for AI within life insurance, and how does the partnership accelerate those ambitions?
So I think we talked about where we are with our AI engine. Where do we want to get to? Well, I think ultimately where we want to get to is that position of being able to make decisions. Now, that might be decisions with humans in the loop for quite a long time until regulation kind of catches up. But that's our kind of desired kind of goal for this kind of first stage of work. I think what we're doing now is we're trying to understand what stages do we need to take along that journey to get to that end goal. Which kind of processes can we automate? Which kind of pieces of an underwriter's daily kind of tasks can we make easier to do or quicker to do? And then which of those will help us to build the greatest amount of confidence in the product? So, underneath our products, if we can gain more confidence in the models that are running, in the way that we're doing things, then ultimately we can get to that point where we make decisions and people will be far easier to kind of sign that off because they know they've been through that journey, they've seen all those kind of pieces happen. So I think how does kind of working with a partner help us? I think, as I said, you guys are seeing plenty of other opportunities out there. You're seeing plenty of other engagements. I know we've had some really great conversations about the kind of AI offering that you're bringing to market, and we're starting to kind of experiment with how that might help us to kind of move forward. We're looking at how that might help us to modernize some of the legacy parts of our applications and kind of ultimately act as a way of, I guess, rebuilding or rewriting or modernizing those parts of our application in a much easier and simpler way than it would if we just did it manually. And so I think that's kind of a really, really interesting kind of piece and a journey for us to go on together. I think our big challenge, and I say this is what will kind of pan out over the next 5 to 10 years, is that we want to be a business that's still doing as well and better than we are doing today. And so we need to keep our software in a position where our customers still get massive value from that. And so we still think there's massive value in the kind of manual rule sets for a number of years, but we also want to get to a point where we understand what might an AI-driven rules engine look like, and how will that take us into that kind of next phase of underwriting, which will happen over that kind of next 5 to 10 year period, we think.
Yeah, makes complete sense. And engineering capacity and skills is one thing, but I'm actually really interested to hear from you, Ben. Other than that, what do you look for in a partner?
Somebody who we can trust and work closely together. Somebody who can, I guess, be there when we need them. It's never going to always be 100% successful in any relationship, and we always have challenges. We always have to work through them. So somebody who knows that that's the case and can kind of work through those challenges. I mean, ultimately, it does boil back down to the kind of, I could go out to work with, many partners. There's lots of partners out there, but why would I choose a specific one? It's because I can trust that they're going to help us in that journey. And to say the second part for me, really that learning piece, I want my team to be better at the end of the day. And I'm sure, Goad will want their teammates to be better as well. If we can learn together and we can get better along that journey, then that for me is kind of mutually beneficial.
Definitely. And what's the AI capability or use case that you're most excited to explore next? And I suppose what role would having a partner have in kind of bringing that to life?
Yeah, so I think the most exciting thing for me is starting to think about what does our industry look like in a world of agents, in a world where human beings might not be doing as much as they're doing today. Which bits of that process make sense to become agents? Which bits of that process need the human in the loop still? And so what I'm spending quite a lot of time thinking about at the moment is, I guess, how we run those agents, how we orchestrate them, how we think about the kind of trust levels that we might want to give to those agents. Because I think, the first stage of kind of using AI for me is being able to just use AI in existing products. That second level of maturity is where we can get to a point where agents play more of a role, where things are happening, if you like, on their own, rather than needing a human being to kind of drive some of those processes. And so that's probably where I spend quite a lot of time thinking, and I think will be the big breakthrough if we can tackle that over the next couple of years.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And do you, just out of curiosity, do you spend a lot of time speaking to other technology leaders about similar things? Because everything you're describing, I hear it all the time, but it is that painting of the vision, and it is that thing of nobody has quite got that yet, and rightly so. But obviously in your position, it's something you've always got to make sure one eye is running the business and keeping everything working, the other eye is on that. Do you spend a lot of time, I suppose, speaking to peers?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, it comes as no surprise. I think anybody who's been to many events over the last couple of months will know that AI is pretty much the topic of kind of every event that we go to, and certainly speaking to a number of engineering leaders, including at your event last month. It's really interesting to hear what people are saying, because I think we're at that stage where there's so much learning going on that things haven't settled down around what good looks like yet. And so there's plenty of kind of lessons to learn from people. It's really interesting to hear how people tackle this in different environments. So, it's great if you're a startup in a non-regulated environment and you're literally writing 100% of your code using AI. You're not reviewing it. You're chucking it out there as quickly as you can because that's the world you live in. Great. that probably isn't relevant for every single organization. I know there's been a lot of kind of noise about tokens and cost of AI and those sorts of
Yes.
things, and that kind of topic will probably continue to kind of go around in circles for I'd say at least another couple of years. Just when we thought we'd solve the problem of cloud cost being the last loads of money, now we're into AI cost, and how do we kind of deal with that? So yeah, we're not, and I'm not the sort of leader who thinks we should just be going and spending on tokens willy-nilly. I think we ultimately have a business to run and kind of make sure we kind of live by the revenue numbers and the kind of numbers that we have in our organization. So for me, it's about how do we get the most efficient use of AI, and I think that's very much a developing situation, shall we say. Nobody's got that truly nailed yet.
Completely agree, and we're seeing that because speed will become implicit very, very soon, and at that point it does turn into a commercial conversation. And are you spending more time with your CFO, Ben, since AI has become more popular, or still the same?
Probably still the same at the moment. I
Yeah.
think it's still I think there's still much more learning to do. I think the problem at the moment is how do you budget for these sorts of things? How do you kind of guess how much you're going to be spending on these AI tools? Especially given that, I don't know, in 3 months' time, whatever you put down on paper is probably going to be totally wrong because something else is going to have happened, a new model is going to come out, a new way of working is going to come out. So really, I think it's starting to, it starts to stretch those, those planning processes, those 12-month budgeting cycles. It makes that even harder. So at the moment, really, we're having to make our best guess. And that's something that both me and Fabian, our CFO, have had a number of conversations around. How do we make our best guess of where it's going to be? And then, frankly, we're going to have to learn as we go through this, and then change our plans if we learn something new.
Amazing. No, thank you. And it's so great to hear from someone who's doing it and living and breathing it. So we really, really appreciate your insights and spending some time with us today to talk through those. Very excited to see the things that you've got upcoming on your roadmap. And just wanted to say a very big thank you, Ben, for joining us. A pleasure as always.
No problem. Thanks for the conversation, Jade. Been really, really interesting to chat.
Cool. Thank you.